Hey, Inspired Moneymaker. What do brands and marketers need to know about Web3 and the Metaverse? We're about to find out. Episode 235 features Michael Cruz, NFT creative, head of content at Summer Friday.
And an easy entry point for any brand, and we'll still be dealing with commercials. So traditional can fit right into the metaverse. Traditional tactics, product placement, and commercials that run, signage, all that fits right in. But the spaces are still to be determined in terms of what's going to be the awesome spot, to hang out at and where you're going to get the most attention.
I'm Andy Wong, host of the Inspired Money podcast and financial advisor at Runnymede Capital Management. This episode is brought to you by Yachty.com. My friend Everald Reed launched Yachty to showcase Jamaica's best products and local vendors. With just a couple mouse clicks, I can treat myself to authentic Jamaican Blue Mountain coffee. We love it at our house. It's balanced, full-bodied, but without the bitterness. I also love the breadfruit chips and natural bar soaps. It's great knowing that every purchase at Yachty.com directly supports local Jamaican small businesses. You've got to try Blue Mountain Coffee for yourself. Go to Yachty.com, that's YAAHDY.com, and make sure to use coupon code MONEY for 10% off your entire order. Try it and let me know what you think. Now on to the show. Today's guest is head of content at New York City creative branding agency Summer Friday. He has worked with leading brands like E-Trade, Sony, Procter Gamble, Thomson Reuters, Pfizer, and the Wall Street Journal. As you're about to hear, he's also an NFT creative and crypto freak. In this episode, you'll learn which brands are leading the way into Web3, how Web3 can bring brands and consumers closer together, and tune into the end to find out what brand experiences can look like in the metaverse. Now let's get inspired with Michael Cruz. Michael, welcome to Inspired Money. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Likewise, super excited, Andy. Thank you.
Let's jump right in. What's your earliest childhood memory of money?
Oh man, it's actually a funny story because I remember walking into a Toys R Us and looking at a remote control car, and I think it cost about $160. And I was just determined to have this car. I saw ads about it and I loved everything about it. I was like, the speed. Apparently, I thought it went 100 miles per hour. I doubt that that was even close, but that's how I saw the marketing. Anyway, so I decided to save up cash to buy it. And I was able to save $200, but I remember hiding it somewhere. And what I did was I hid it somewhere and I drew this entire elaborate map to remind me where I hid it, and lost the map and essentially have no idea where the $200 went. I lost it, never got the car, and even when we moved out of that home, I was still searching for the money. So either someone took it or I don't know, but I remember losing. That's my first and earliest memory about money, is losing my savings.
So unfortunately, you didn't have a non-fungible map back in when
I
you were a
lost
kid.
access. So maybe that trauma has helped me today. I don't know. I keep track of my money now.
I do miss Toys R Us. We're still waiting to see like how it emerges, what
Right?
iteration, like what it looks like
I know.
when it comes out again. Well, I'm very excited to have you on the show. Um, Tell us, as partner head of content at Summer Friday, like tell us a little bit about your role and a little bit about the clients that you're serving.
Sure, absolutely. It's interesting because my career path has been interesting, but I've been in marketing, or back then advertising, right? Because it was almost to the masses, for about 18 years roughly. And Summer Friday, we actually are fairly new. So we started in 2020 at the peak of COVID, due to some circumstances from our other agency, which sort of closed their shops. So we spun off Summer Friday with a very clear goal of streamlining our services, and making it more about strategy and creative, and also launching a company that was really focused on culture. So those were the goals. And from our previous experience, we were able to dive right in and capture some clients within the financial sector. So we're heavy in financial industry. We're also heavily into the health insurance industry as well as utility space. So some pretty solid industries to be a part of, certainly now, especially. But yeah, so in terms of client names, we work a lot with E-Trade and Cigna. Do quite a bit of work with National Grid, just to name a few.
Sounds like a good, diverse client base.
It's a good base, and I think our team is nimble enough and small enough where it's been fantastic. And again, we kind of started with understanding that there's this sort of intersection between what clients need and the speed of demand in which they need it. So big ideas, nimble execution is our sort of tag.
What kind of campaigns are you running for them? And what kind of creative are you doing? Like, where does your agency fit in the process?
I mean, there's a range. So we've done everything from brand identity work all the way through to launching content initiatives like educational content for some of our financial clients. And then, well, with National Grid, for example, we've launched Project C, which is a full campaign that's focused around sustainability and social equity and neighborhood development, and basically built that from the ground up. So we work on developing brands and then the content strategy all the way through to the execution.
It sounds pretty broad. Talk a little bit about the lens that you look through from your, professional position, looking at Web3. Like, what do brands and marketers need to know? What have you been learning yourself?
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that I started off saying advertising. Yeah, it was for the masses, right? You kind of, when commercials were fun, um, there wasn't that much tracking involved, right? And then when Web 2 came out, I mean, Web 2 being the internet and social networks, a lot of tracking started to happen, and then people's personal devices, and then there was tracking added there. So we became a lot more personal, a lot more strategic, which I refer to as just marketing, right? Like there's a convergence of creative and data, and there's a real hyper focus on who you're targeting. And it all makes sense from a business objective. So that's the beauty of where we've evolved to. And in my opinion, Web3 is sort of an extension of that. It's like the opportunities are somewhat endless, in terms of being able to provide something that the community wants, getting that feedback, the one-to-one, um, instant feedback from your community as to what they're looking for, and you then providing them that, or them having a direct impact on how you evolve, whether it's a roadmap or the governance of the project. There's so much nuance, and I think it's completely untapped right now. But if your brand is focused on building a community, which I think every brand is focused on, no matter what industry you're in, there's a customer base that's your community. If there's an element of community, then Web3 is for that. Um, I think it's positioned perfectly to deliver on building communities and understanding, how you fit as a company in terms of delivering them something they want.
So with Web 2, companies were able to create content, whether that's video, like text, blogging, and answering their potential customers' questions, engaging with them. What does Web3, like infinite possibilities, blow my mind? So as a starting point, what does it look like?
Yeah, I mean, I always say as a starting point, there's sort of these platforms that are emerging as the first things you need for Web3 projects. And obviously, not getting into the conversation of the metaverse and what that looks like. I think the first platform that's sort of emerging as a channel to be a part of is Discord, in my opinion. So Discord, in what it offers and how it lays out your community and the gamification that comes with it, is a great entry point. And I don't see why, aside from regulatory issues, and compliance, why there couldn't be a component of your marketing, um, going into that platform, just the same way as we would consider Instagram, Facebook as something that we would absolutely be a part of, and Twitter, right? Twitter is the other platform that's sort of rising up in terms of supporting Web3 initiatives. So if we're simplifying the entry point, I would say build a Discord community, and really start to play within that community in terms of, um, really highlighting those who are active and gamifying it, leveling them up to potential moderators, leveling them up and gifting them certain items, running live sessions on your Discord. So there's voice chats that you can run, audio sessions. You can do AMAs, the Ask Me Anythings, and really connect and tap into your community. You can leverage them for focus groups. You can leverage them in a million ways, right? But it's them they are the ones who are buying into this. It's not a push, right? It's a pull to some degree, and I think that's the difference, and a great, again, starting point when considering anything you're going to build towards. Then you can evolve to, like, whether or not it makes sense for you to launch an NFT project or a token, and everything else that just continues to spiral over into the, infinite possibilities that might daunt anyone. But
What brands do you see as the early movers right now, the ones to watch, and do those include any of your clients?
We are in the space now. We work with a couple of blockchain companies, and I'm working. We kind of built this sort of incubator, lab within Summer Friday that's exploring opportunities on launching different projects for certain clients. So we're actively looking for those opportunities. And currently, I'm in talks with one who seems very promising, and it's more of an educational space, which is super interesting to me in terms of how they would build that community and build Discord out to be a platform to educate, so people can just drop in and talk about their experiences, or drop into a room specifically and learn about whatever that room is focused on in terms of topic. So I think that's an incredible opportunity that may expand out to an NFT project. We will see. But in terms of early adopters, I mean, the ones that made the most sense, because it started with art, right? It started with NFTs, just a pixel and art, and how are we paying millions of dollars for an ape, Um, and that was all funny, but there's elements of utility that come with it. And Web3 is also interesting because of the status that you obtain with that art piece. So when you think about status, then really the early adopters make sense, which are the fashion brands, right? And it totally makes sense because while there's a huge difference in quality, what you're really paying for is the brand name. So in the same way, when you think about art, or the NFT space as a whole, at least in the early days, it was about that status. If I hold this and I change my profile pic to this JPEG, this PFP proof, picture for proof. If I use this PFP, on my social networks, I now represent one of the early adopters. And if the project is super successful, I'm now someone who's looked at as an authority in the space. And that clout is what people were paying for in a lot of ways. So,
Who's doing that so far? Gucci?
yeah, there's Gucci. I mean, Louis Vuitton, Adidas, which again, that's more sneaker, but it's fashion based. Well, they do more than sneakers, but Adidas not. I wouldn't call them like high end, but they're certainly in fashion. They're doing amazing things. Adidas been doing a ton of collaborations. Puma just started doing collaborations with different NFT communities. Um, and then you get into, obviously, those who are leading the metaverse, like Meta, and what they're currently doing with some of their spaces, like Horizon, um, and then you get into the music artists and all of that. So right now the space is sort of saturated with fashion, and artists, so entertainment.
Is Hermes doing anything, or was that more an artist who was doing something and they were suing that
Yeah,
artist?
no, I think Hermes was they were doing something, if I'm not mistaken. At least that's what some earlier articles. I didn't track them closely, but I did see a few articles come out with their projects. They were pretty early as well. And to your point, I'm not sure if that's something that they completely sanctioned or if it was an initiative they launched. So I couldn't tell you, but I'm excited about some of these other, some newcomers in terms of interesting projects. Even like the PSA. I don't know if you're familiar with the beans. Um, that was a campaign that came out of Australia, and it was basically a PSA for staying safe. And they launched a whole NFT project with their characters, their bean characters, and it's beautiful to see because it's something that's so far removed in terms of being able to spot the opportunity, but makes so much sense once it's launched and once they're in it. And that's been really fun, and to see to see that grow.
I'll have to link to that in the show notes and include some articles or something so that I can learn more and others can too.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about like different projects that you think that brands will be launching. Like what kind of things do you think we'll see as consumers?
Yeah, I think what's really super interesting right now in the space, and I can go through multiple projects that I'm sort of involved in, which are fun. One of them is Hate Beast, which is more fashion focused. So they're using what's cool about the space right now is more the technology. And I like to I think I stole this from somewhere. I can't remember anymore because I've been digesting so much knowledge from everywhere. But the idea of Web3 is sort of like you have an Excel sheet and you can do the easy 1 plus 1, but because it equals 2, and you have these cells that do that, you can build on that. It's sort of like that's the foundation. And the technology is such that you can build on that and start doing completely complex equations that are incredible. So when you think about the technology and the base point, like authentication, when you think about decentralization, when you think about even when you've launched um, an NFT, but there's a reveal that comes after. And then once that reveal happens, there's a level 2 that you can now adjust the NFTs through programming, and it morphs and changes, or you can add combined elements and mutate your NFT, for example, like the Bored Ape Yacht Club did, and then they have the mutant Ape Yacht Clubs and all that stuff, or so there's so much potential. And what I think is interesting is the way you start to play with those communities. So I guess the best way to do this in terms of breaking down your question is to give an example of like what truly excites me, right? So saying that it's industry agnostic really creates an interesting playground. So if I'm let's call it I'm a financial institution, or I'm selling a product. I think financial institution might be more fun. I can launch a community based on education, and I can rank those people within that community um, to kind of give them a free offering of some sorts, whether it's a one-to-one education. And that's all great. But to launch that community, I could start with a token, which essentially I can set up for the top best coaches within education in the financial industry. They get minted in, and there's 1,000 of them. So you have access to them when you come in and and buy into this community from a mass phase 2, let's call it, which is, you know, 6,000 mints and allows a larger community in. So there are ways that you can start to play with what you offer and gamify it. And then there's ways to build clout and really get an awesome community started through tokenomics and incentivizing. And then the utility of the coin is what becomes incredibly interesting, and how you give back to that community. And that's where, again, the possibilities become somewhat endless, but it's really more about being able to level up your community, offer that product and service that you provide in a fun, engaging way, and eventually have them be a part of even the roadmap to build loyalty. So in terms of projects, I'm part of Shadow Quest, which is pretty awesome because that's fully gamified, and the way they're leveraging the technology is incredible because there are complexities with transferring your NFTs and gas fees, and they've gotten around some of that, which has been, again, amazing. And how you then apply that technology back to a potential client, it's just it I see it, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere. It's not going to go away. And the way it relates back to you as a consumer is that you're going to have more affinity towards the brand. You're going to have more say in where the brand goes, and you're going to be a lot more engaged throughout the entire process.
Sounds like it's bringing the consumer and the brand closer together and potentially can really drive product development because of
Yes,
that closer relationship.
100%. It's like one big company now. It's You've got the corporation and you've got your customers, but Web3 brings them both together, if it's done right.
To what extent does a brand have to like premeditate and pre-plan all these details before launching versus being able to implement as they go, as they're building the community?
Yeah, I think that it's interesting because there's so many projects now that you can learn from. So at this state in the game, initially it was just get in there and play and get dirty, right? Like just solve it. And there were a lot of the community who was supporting Web3 that just allowed for some of those fallacies. Now you need to be a bit more polished because there are really successful projects. There are right ways to do things and wrong ways to do it. So the opinion has shifted from it being your sandbox and just play without expectation of monetization, without really having a full roadmap, to you should have everything baked out. Like you should have a very clear plan on what your ultimate big audacious goals are in terms of the project, and make them audacious, make them awesome. Like there was a project that launched that wanted to buy space on the moon, right? And they would break that parcel up and redistribute it to the community. It's pretty awesome. They started talking to NASA about doing it. So there are incredibly audacious goals. Links is pretty awesome, where they're trying to build a huge golf course, and that was wildly successful. I'm not sure where they are now in terms of their roadmap. But what you want to do is enter the space with a clear roadmap and understand that that might change, but there's a lot of planning. There's planning on how you build your Discord and how you support your community, whether or not the company goals and the objectives align directly with what you're trying to build, and does it align with your big audacious goal. But I would say the more you plan at this juncture, the better off you'll be. And if you want to get into the details of what a proper plan might look like, I mean, it's again, it kind of opens up that Pandora's box of opportunities, because it's really, if you can dream it, you can build a roadmap for it.
In your view, does a bigger brand that has more resources and a bigger following have an advantage? Or is it smaller guys who can be more nimble and really think out of the box without having to get many more approvals?
I can tell you it's both, because, and it's funny to say that. I think earlier on, it was the artists again. There was just more forgiveness in the space, and people were going off a hype, and it was amazing. But there's been too many people who have lost too much money at this point to projects that just completely fail and go away. So I think that people are going to be looking for those established brands. They can't fail in the space because it's going to hurt their brand. So there's more security, more safety on jumping on projects that are supported by big brands. And that safety and security might come with some downsides in terms of how nimble they might be, or exciting of a project it might be, or how much they actually give back to the community. So there are payoffs. I think ultimately there are these communities that are starting, that have been early adopters, who are um, doing their absolute best to sort of keep control and keep things decentralized and keep things as pure as it was when it first launched. But as corporations start to come in, I think ultimately us as consumers and investors, I mean, we'll start to default to the quality and the safety and the security of those bigger corporations, and hopefully the benefits will stay, right? Like hopefully those corporations will really invest back into the community and understand the importance of that.
Well, it does feel very early, and as part of that, it feels very Wild West like too. I mean, we do see frauds and crazy things happening. What are the signs that you see that
Yeah.
NFTs are here to stay? And, how do you debunk some of the myths that you hear?
Well, I mean, if you're asking specifically signs on projects that might be launching like red flags, or are you saying NFTs as a whole or Web3 as a whole, if it's going to stay?
Yeah, let's start with the second one.
Okay.
Yeah. What are signs that this is real and has
Yeah.
longevity?
I mean, the technology is a sign of it, in my opinion. The access that you're given to a community, and uh, the ability for authentication in a digital space that hasn't been there before. So that to me is a clear indication of a technology that's not going anywhere anytime soon. Um, in terms of different projects, those can come and go immediately. Like there's rug pulls all day. So that's separate. But I don't know if I don't know if I can even come up with an argument as to say how this would not continue on. It's sort of like when Web 2 first came out and everyone was like, why do I need a website? And now it doesn't even make sense to say it. Like, I think my mind is so far down the rabbit hole that I can't see this not continuing. It's just this is the evolution. There's no way it's going away. And more the technology, what we call it later, that's fine. But people understanding non-fungible tokens are, and their association to mostly what art is, and not applying the utility. That's not what we're talking about here. There's more depth to it. So the technology is going to be leveraged. It's going to evolve, and it's going to turn into incredible experiences for the consumer, and an incredible opportunity for any industry diving into it to really understand the consumer and build companies with them, or specifically for them.
With the website analogy, it sounds like every brand, every company is going to have to be involved down the road.
That's my opinion. I think absolutely. At some point, again, in looking at this, if you're a company that has a customer base, you should be thinking Web3.
And it's interesting that you used a financial company as your first fun example, because I feel like whether it's E-Trade or Cigna, highly regulated industries that tend, a little bit more challenge when it came to even Web 2. It's like, how are you going to make a website that's fun and engaging? Because it's sort of like a dry subject. Um, it's not fashion, right? Or gaming.
100%. And that's why I went there, because I think that if we start thinking in those terms, the rest sort of makes sense, right? If you take someone who's highly regulated, um, and you start to think about launching specific tokens that are invitation only and a curated space, then you can keep it closed doors. It doesn't have to be open. But what that gives you access to is what we're talking about here. So I think I think that I like to take the most challenging case study and see if it works as sort of like a litmus test to whether or not this is going to scale the way I think it can scale. And now it's silly for us to say, Cigna doesn't have a website. Like that's impossible. It's impossible. So, uh, so I think they will get around it the same way as we've seen in the past with other technologies.
Well, I love the idea of potentially gamifying financial literacy and actually lifting people up and educating people.
Yeah, and it's less of, right now the education is sort of one-sided unless you're on a webinar or, one-to-one in terms of communication, but it's not personalized. And there are so many financial issues, right, that people go through on a daily basis, and no one is identical to the other. So if you can think about a system that manages a community, almost automated, or gives you that sort of ability to scale and give one-to-one experience to communities, that's what we're talking about here. And then what that looks like in the metaverse, that's a whole other conversation. It could be TED Talks in the metaverse. You can go to E-Trade Financial School in the metaverse and decide that this is the experience you want to have, but it's the same sort of experience as what you'd gain from a communal education, right? Like it's the same sort of experience that you'd gain, in my opinion, on like a Discord channel. And that's not the same as any other platform right now. What Discord offers is not the same as Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or anything. So,
As you've been educating yourself and going down this rabbit hole, are there discords that have been particularly helpful for you or ones that you really, really enjoy the experience?
um, wow. I mean, I've been a part of a lot of different projects, and all the projects excite me for different reasons. So, I, you know, there's currently a Discord that's Jump, which is marketers who are trying to get educated in the Web3 space. That one's super interesting. It's education, and you're allowed to be vulnerable. You're allowed to go in and ask questions that you may not want to ask in public because you feel silly. But we got to understand this is a very new space, so it's okay to be that vulnerable in it. But that's really interesting as a Discord. I was part of the Lazy Lions. I'm still part of Lazy Lions, which was focused on just community. And they're sort of a blue chip NFT, which is essentially not going anywhere because the community is so strong, but not as much utility. And then you've got tokens with a lot of utility, like Rug Radio, which is super interesting because it's sort of like if you imagine the YouTube, right? YouTube started off as an NFT project. That's what Rug Radio is like. You can't be a host on Rug Radio without purchasing a token, for example. So if you're a host on there, you're in within their economy. And what's beautiful about that is that they have their own token, they have their own coin or currency that they've created. So it's sort of like this beautiful ecosystem that you can collapse into an amazing financial case study, right? Like, how does this work? But they're leveling up their hosts and building, offerings around how much of their currency you hold. And again, it's a powerful thing when you think about it as a brand. It's kind of like membership and loyalty points, right? It's some of this traditional stuff that we know, but again, how you track it and how you personalize towards it is the real opportunity. So Rug Radio is super interesting. And then I'm part of Shadow Quest, which is awesome. And then Shadow Quest is doing some crazy gamification and internet games, which is crazy in terms of tokenomics. And so I think it's just getting involved. There's not one Discord or one project that kind of encompasses everything that's possible. There's so much that you gain from each individual project that's out there. I would say explore.
Is it is it very interesting because the like tokenization or tokens can be quantified and measured? Because I'm thinking with something like YouTube, maybe the currency is attention and subscribers, but there's not like what is the value of that? That's a little bit more nebulous. If you have a token, it's like how many tokens do you have?
Right, right. And that's it. I mean, it's customizable. So if you have someone who's working, because again, this is creating jobs. This is super interesting. Like in terms of the kinds of jobs that it's creating, whether it's smart contracts engineers and or even tokenomic experts on how to like build an effective economy within your project. So yes, to your point, YouTube pays you back in dollars. So you have a certain viewer subscribership base, you get paid in dollars, and obviously the advertisers who advertise on those channels are specific to your, and they can do that, and it's all trackable and it's great. So it's not really that different, but there's more transparency, there's more tooling, there's more opportunity, there's more of like a, a governance play where you can open it up to the community and they can tell you what they want. There's more feedback. It's not closed. It's also sort of decentralized in a lot of ways. And the utility starts to add up from the success of the project, which if you were an early adopter, you feel truly invested. There's hype. So there's a lot of customization, I guess. And Rug Radio has a video. They're very clear on what that, how they built it. So I would encourage anyone who's exploring, complex tokenomics to look at that as sort of a case study to explore and learn from.
Have to do some homework.
Yeah.
I do want to go. I do want to talk a little bit about Metaverse since it seems like we can go many places there. But as far as marketing, advertising, is that an opportunity that because it's so new,
Oh
like
yeah.
brands can actually start buying a virtual billboard somewhere and it's very low cost right now? Like what should brands be paying attention to metaverse wise?
Yeah, I think, it's where, right? And how many users are there. So I think if you're entering the metaverse, then you have to be really smart with who you're collaborating with. Um, so for example, like, Horizon is a great space, right? That's not going anywhere. That's meta space. There's already concerts, like live concerts that you can go in. I don't know how live they are, but you can see Two Chain massive, and you can be a 3D character within that concert and talk to somebody from Turkey or wherever in the world they are and watch the same concert, which is a really cool experience. Now, if you can interact with the Pepsi bottle or anything else, then there's your marketing, right? So, or it can be sponsored by, and there's your marketing. So, in the same way, um, there's real opportunity to do things like that. Subway is interesting because they actually have a Subway store, like a restaurant. And what's funny is that they actually employ somebody to serve in that virtual environment because when you walk in, you're going to want to see somebody there. So you have employees who are being paid to spend 7 hours in the metaverse at this metaverse restaurant just to engage and talk to people. So the world is shaping already. It's crazy, but the space in metaverse and AR, augmented reality, virtual reality, all those things will continue to evolve. And the only way they become more and more successful is when the price point goes down and the barrier of entry is there's less friction for entering the space. So what that means is before Oculus, when it first launched, you were tethered to a PC. Now you don't need the PC, so you can put it on. Now you're in this space, but it's still kind of bulky. You need a great internet connection, and you're constantly on these remote controllers to navigate. If that becomes more evolved and it's glasses like this that are easy to put on, sort of that meta version of the metaverse that you know that was Mark Zuckerberg sort of explained to us, where you have these glasses and you're in this augmented reality and you're seeing certain things. Like that level of access makes it more for the masses. So my point is, as this space, the metaverse, starts to saturate with more users, then the opportunity for marketing is obviously the return on that investment exponentially goes up. Right now, if you're entering the space, it's more about discovering the quirks, understanding the partnerships, maybe understanding the technology, but you're not going to get the same visibility or return on the investment. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be in this space now, because once it blows up, it's going to be huge. But who do you partner with? The most popular games is what you want to be partnered with. So again, wherever that community flows, that space, whether it's Decentraland or the Sandbox or Roblox, or right now my kids play this gorilla tag game where they're constantly like running in the, in this game. Whether you have to understand who you're partnering with, right? And whether or not that's going to be an investment worthwhile because of the eyeballs and the interaction that goes into it. So I think that's the big thing until we start getting fed ads. And then again, you're really centralizing the full experience. So if we're saying in the full metaverse, a big corporation manages all the ads, let's call it Google, and you're getting served ads based on your whatever your interests are, then that will become wildly, successful one for whoever launches that, and an easy entry point for any brand. And we'll still be dealing with commercials. So traditional can fit right into the metaverse. Traditional tactics, product placement, and commercials that run, signage, all that fits right in. But the spaces are still to be determined in terms of what's going to be the awesome spot, to hang out at, and where you're going to get the most attention.
And your Subway example sounds like it can be likened to traditional event marketing, because while I cannot eat a Subway footlong in the metaverse, if there's an employee there who's telling me they will give me a coupon for my Subway app for a free footlong, then suddenly it translates to the real world. I'm showing up at a Subway and buying lunch.
100%.
Yeah, that is really cool.
Yeah,
You've talked about some of the things that brands like should be considering and what they should be looking at. What are mistakes that they should avoid at this early stage?
I mean, the mistakes I think are somewhat obvious mistakes in terms of not planning and getting in, and it feeling like it's exploitative, like exploiting the community versus additive. I think that I guess what I'll say is, I imagine that the biggest challenge right now for massive brands is to acknowledge this without the expectation of a return. Like if they need to go in with the mindset that they're gifting an experience to their community, and they need to be vulnerable enough to say, like, let's build this thing together, and let's fail together in certain areas, but make it better in the long run. I think that's where you're going to find the most success. If you're going to come in and try to dominate the space and maybe do too much, or start to immediately exploit and ask your community to do things for you and answer surveys and build out, that's clearly one way, like one-sided, then it's not going to work. Like Web3 is a opportunity to really build with your community. And if that's exploited in any way, I think that's going to be your biggest mistake.
Because authenticity is important.
100%.
You can't be viewed as just trying to take advantage.
No, no. And I think, we asked these questions early days. It's like, when am I going to get paid for being served ads? When am I going to get paid for clicking? When am I going to get paid or given discounts for purchasing these things? When am I going to get the real value of ownership? Now, like, that's what Web3 is.
I'm curious, as a marketer who has like you dove headfirst in the pool. How has researching Web3 and blockchain and crypto, how has that changed your views on money, if any?
Oh yeah, it's completely blown up. Yeah, money is just silly. I mean, I think we've always understood that, even back in the day when it was trade, money is trade, right? So you have something, and the other person needs it. And then we centralized it by saying, okay, let's come up with a coin that has value everywhere. So It's not exchanging the goods, but it can purchase you the goods, right? Um, so utility is how it's changed for me. I think of money as as option, right? And I think we've thought this for some time. If you have a lot of money, you have a lot of options. Um, but more than that, it's like it's how does this serve me? How does it serve my goals? So what is the utility of what I own, which is a little different. And I think it's going to maybe shape the world for better, in my opinion, which is, less about amount and more about what you need and what serves you in the right way. Um,
Hmm.
I don't know if that's helped. I haven't given that thought, but I do think that it has impacted me differently. I don't look at like I don't carry cash. Everything's digital, but I'm also not looking at the US dollar the same way because I think that while it's somewhat stable, it's not. And while it's easily transferable to get what I need, um, I'm seeing that more and more that can happen digitally. So if the US dollar converts to a crypto and we can still use the same things that we use, then there's no real difference. Then the question becomes what's the utility of holding this money? And that's where there's some utility in supporting blockchains and different cryptocurrencies. Um, and there's utility there in terms of the interest that you're gaining being staked. So you're earning interest on staking your cryptocurrency. Like I don't earn interest in my bank. Like what is it, 0.02? Like that's ridiculous return. And for what? And guess what? The only way to control inflation is to like make it harder for me to take out a loan. And now I have to pay a higher interest while trying to tank the economy for the better good of the economy. Like it's so backward, our financial institution in a lot of ways, and it never benefits, you know, us. It doesn't really add that much utility other than you get what you want if you have a lot of it. So I think that's the way the narrative is shifted in some way. It's about can I grow my finance, whether it's crypto or USD cash, right? Can I grow it with 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 little to no effort? Like will I gain utility if I park it like savings like I used to? And
Yeah,
if
it's
the
super
answer
interesting.
is, if the answer is no with one of them and yes with the other, then I'm putting most of my money here for now. And I'm riding the wave. Like I've got quite a bit invested in Ethereum and I'm riding the wave, and Bitcoin and I'm riding the wave, and Solana and I'm riding the wave.
It's interesting because it sounds like with just US dollars, maybe it was kind of binary. You have a lot or you have a little. But with digital currencies, maybe it's more nuanced. And I'm just wondering, like, for your children 20 years from now, 30 years from now, does that mean that money not only has the utility and value as an exchange that you can buy something, but does it does it more like closely align in individuals' values
Yes.
with the currency? Or like what type of currency are you using?
I love that you said that because yes, I think that you can almost build a community around, let's call it Solana, right? Just for the sake of argument. And if I hold Solana, I only interact in Solana because that's my community. That's where I gain most of my utility. So I don't even care if I own anything else, right? So I think that that's where it becomes super interesting. And that can exist from a Solana blockchain to an NFT project, even if it gives you access. If Bored Ape Yacht Club launches their yacht club in Florida, like, and that gives me access, and most of my days are spent there. You know, that's the current. That's my true currency. That's where I gain most value, and I interact with people, and that's my community, and I do business with those people, and you can keep me in that coin forever and I don't need anything more. So I agree. I think that the future could potentially be fragmented in that way. I don't know, but I think that someone will control it. But that's the beauty of decentralized, right? And I think that I would say, going back to your original question, it's certainly how I've curved my relationship with money is more around the utility concept.
Interesting. I like to ask all the Inspired Money guests, how do you define success?
I think success is when you align, when you feel aligned with your purpose and your decisions are mapped by that. So I think that, to me, there are way too many extremely depressed rich people. And that's just, and if they were aligned better with their purpose, and were making decisions that way, I think that that would be more success. And then there are those who are living a very simple life and just know their value and know exactly what they're aligned to. So I think no matter what you go after, success is really about feeling alignment.
I like it. And I think just as an extension, since we've been talking so much about community today, when you look at those blue zones where people have like extremely extreme longevity, community is part of that. They always say that there's a heavy weighting towards community. So whether it's real community or digital community, we'll see what happens in the future. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your views on Web3 and marketing and branding with us. Tell the Inspired Money viewers and listeners where to follow you.
You can go to heysummerfriday.com. That's our website, and it's fun. You'll see my face there somewhere. And certainly follow me on LinkedIn. Just search my name, Michael Cruz, Summer Friday. I believe it's Michael Cruz 22 if you really want to find me directly on my LinkedIn. And find me on Twitter as well, mcruz1122.
I'll put that in the show notes. Thanks so much, Michael.
Absolutely. Thank you for this. This was fantastic.
So, what was your favorite Inspired Money moment? Talking with Michael, I couldn't help but feel the future is now. Technology has changed our lives so much, from candy bar and clamshell cell phones of the past to app-powered smartphones of today. I can't even begin to imagine the massive changes that Web3, NFTs, the Metaverse, how it can evolve, how we engage with brands in the physical and virtual worlds. I loved Michael's examples of financial service companies gamifying financial education, or even Subway sandwiches in the Metaverse. What will our kids' world look like? It's important to think about these trends if we want to identify and invest in great companies of the future. If you had a different favorite Inspired Money moment, please post a comment or share it in the Inspired Money Makers Facebook group at inspiredmoney.fm/Facebook. Be sure to subscribe to my email that goes out every 2 weeks. It's investment focused, and the Runnymede investment team highlights data, news, and events that we think are worth sharing. Subscribe by going to inspiredmoney.fm/newsletter. It's free and informative. Thank you for joining me on this mission. Have an inspired week and do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens.